Daniel's phone buzzed during the quarterly review meeting. He ignored it at first, nodding along as Jenkins droned on about profit margins. But when it buzzed again, then again, he felt that familiar knot forming in his stomach. The same knot that had been his constant companion for the past 3 months. "Excuse me," he muttered, stepping out of the conference room. 3 missed calls. All from Sarah, his wife of 7 years. He called back immediately. The phone rang once, twice, 5 times. Then voicemail. Her voice, bright and cheerful, asking him to leave a message. A recording from happier times. He tried again. Same result. Then the text came through, "I'm busy." 2 words. No explanation. No apology for the urgent calls. Just dismissal. His fingers moved before his brain caught up. Stay with him. He watched the message turn from delivered to read. The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then nothing. She didn't even bother to lie. Daniel slumped against the hallway wall, the fluorescent lights humming overhead. His reflection stared back from the window overlooking downtown Chicago. A man in a tailored suit, successful on paper, hollow in practice. When had he become this person? When had he become the kind of man who knew his wife was cheating but said nothing, did nothing, just watched it happen like a spectator to his own life? 3 months ago, he'd been updating the family plan on their phones. That's when he'd noticed the location sharing feature was still active. Sarah had set it up years ago when she traveled for work, a safety measure that had long since become unnecessary. But there it was, still broadcasting her every movement. He told himself he wouldn't check it. That was an invasion of privacy. That was the behavior of a paranoid husband, not who he wanted to be. He'd lasted 2 days. The first time he opened the app, she was at the gym. Just where she'd said she'd be. Relief washed over him, followed immediately by shame. See? Nothing to worry about. He was being ridiculous. But then came the Tuesday she'd claimed to have dinner with her college friend Amy. The location pin sat fixed at the Riverside Hotel for 4 hours. When she came home, her hair was freshly washed, her makeup reapplied. She'd kissed him on the cheek and gone straight to bed. After that, he checked constantly. Obsessively. He learned the pattern. Monday and Thursday evenings. Sometimes Wednesday afternoons, during what she called extended lunch meetings. The locations varied, hotels mostly, but sometimes an apartment building in Lincoln Park. Always the same apartment number, he'd discovered. 4B. He'd driven past it once. A nice building. The kind with a doorman and potted trees flanking the entrance. The kind of place that suggested the man she was seeing had money. That he wasn't just an affair, but an upgrade. Daniel had sat in his car across the street for an hour that day, watching the entrance. He'd told himself he wanted to see the man's face, to understand what Sarah had chosen over him. But when a couple emerged, the woman laughing, the man's hand on her lower back, Daniel had driven away without even checking if it was them. Some truths were easier left unconfirmed. His phone buzzed again. Another text from Sarah, "Don't do this." Do what? Acknowledge reality? Stop pretending? He walked back into the conference room, grabbed his briefcase, and interrupted Jenkins mid-sentence. "I'm sorry, I need to leave. Family emergency." The drive home took 20 minutes. 20 minutes of white-knuckled gripping of the steering wheel, of running through scenarios in his head. Would he scream? Cry? Throw her things out on the lawn like some cliché from a bad movie? By the time he pulled into their driveway, he knew exactly what he needed to do. The house was dark except for the porch light, its warm glow a mockery of welcome. Sarah's car was gone, of course. She wouldn't be home for hours. Daniel unlocked the door and stepped inside. The silence was deafening. For the first time in months, maybe years, he saw their home clearly. The wedding photos on the mantel. The vacation souvenirs from trips where they'd been happy, or at least convinced themselves they were. The throw pillows Sarah had insisted on, the ones he'd found too decorative and impractical. All of it felt like someone else's life. He set his briefcase down and pulled out his laptop. It was time to stop being a victim in his own story. It was time to take control. The first thing Daniel did was pour himself a scotch. Not to steady his nerves, they were surprisingly steady, but because this moment felt significant enough to mark. He'd always imagined confronting Sarah's affair in a moment of high emotion, of devastating discovery. Instead, he felt calm, focused, almost relieved. The relief was the worst part. What did it say about their marriage that learning of his wife's betrayal brought peace? He settled at the kitchen table, laptop open, and began methodically documenting everything. Illinois was not a no-fault divorce state in terms of property division. Evidence of infidelity could matter. His lawyer, and yes, he'd need a lawyer, would want facts, dates, proof. The location history was the foundation. He created a spreadsheet, logging every visit to the Lincoln Park apartment, every unexplained hotel stay. The pattern was damning. 23 separate occasions over 3 months. Not a mistake. Not a momentary lapse in judgment. A full-blown relationship. Next, he pulled up their phone records. He'd been paying the bill for years without ever looking closely at the details. Now he did. There was a number Sarah texted constantly. Dozens of messages daily, often late at night. Calls that lasted an hour or more during her lunch breaks. He ran the number through a reverse lookup. Marcus Webb, 42 years old. Senior partner at a downtown law firm. Divorced. No children. LinkedIn profile showed a man with silver-touched temples and the kind of confident smile that suggested he'd never been denied anything in his life. Daniel studied the photo. This was the man sleeping with his wife. Objectively handsome, successful, exactly the kind of man Sarah would be attracted to. In college, before they'd met, she'd dated guys like this, ambitious, polished, always trading up. Daniel had been different back then. Earnest. Working 2 jobs to pay for school. She'd told him she loved that about him, his groundedness, his authenticity. When had authenticity stopped being enough? He took another sip of scotch and kept digging. Their credit card statements revealed charges he'd never questioned. Dinners at expensive restaurants on nights she'd claimed to be working late. A weekend at a bed and breakfast in Michigan 2 months ago, she'd said it was a work retreat. The company credit card had no corresponding charges. The evidence piled up like snow in a Chicago winter. Heavy. Undeniable. Suffocating. At 11 p.m., his phone buzzed. Sarah, I'll be home soon. Please don't be upset. We can talk. He didn't respond. At 11:30, another text. Daniel. At midnight, her car pulled into the driveway. He heard the garage door open, her heels clicking on the concrete floor. The door to the kitchen opened, and there she was. Sarah looked beautiful. She always did. Tonight she wore the black dress he liked, the one that hugged her figure just right. Her hair fell in waves around her shoulders. But her eyes carried the weight of guilt and something else. Defiance. Maybe. Or resignation. You're still up, she said quietly. I am. She set her purse on the counter, not quite meeting his gaze. We should talk. Should we? He kept his voice even. What would you like to talk about, Sarah? Your busy evening? The reason you couldn't answer my calls? A flash of something crossed her face. Anger. Fear. Don't. Don't what? Don't ask questions? Don't notice when my wife disappears for 6 hours? Don't acknowledge what's been happening for 3 months? Her face went pale. How long have you known? Does it matter? Yes, it matters. Her voice cracked. If you knew, why didn't you say something? Why did you just let it happen? The question hit him harder than he expected. Why hadn't he said something? He'd asked himself 1,000 times. Fear? Pride? Some misguided hope that if he ignored it, it would resolve itself? I was trying to understand, he said finally. Trying to figure out if our marriage was worth fighting for, or if I was just clinging to something already dead. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. And what did you decide? Daniel closed his laptop. I decided that I deserve better than being someone's backup plan. Better than being the husband you come home to when you're done with your real life. It's not like that. What's it like then? Enlighten me. He stood, suddenly too agitated to sit. Tell me how spending 3 nights a week with Marcus Webb is somehow not what it looks like. Her face crumpled at the name. You know about Marcus. I know everything, Sarah. The hotels. The apartment. The phone calls. The lies. He gestured to the laptop. It's all documented. Every time you chose him over me, over us, over the vows we made. I didn't mean for this to happen, she whispered. He made me feel alive again. Seen. Like I mattered. The words were knives, each one finding its mark. And I didn't. You were always working. Always tired. We became roommates who occasionally had sex. When did we stop being us? Daniel wanted to argue, to defend himself. But the truth was complicated. Yes, he'd worked long hours. Yes, he'd been tired. But he'd been working to build their future, to give her the life she wanted. The nice house. The vacations. The security. Apparently, security wasn't enough. So instead of talking to me, you found someone else, he said flatly. I tried to talk to you. Do you remember our anniversary? I planned that whole dinner, tried to talk about us, about how disconnected I felt. You spent the whole night on your phone dealing with the Henderson account. He did remember. And she was right. He'd been distracted, stressed about work. But that was one night. One mistake. Did that justify 3 months of betrayal? This isn't about one dinner, Sarah. This is about you making a choice. Every time you texted him instead of me. Every time you lied about where you were. Those were choices. She wiped her tears. What happens now? Daniel picked up a manila folder from the table. Inside were business cards for 3 divorce attorneys. He'd printed them that afternoon. Now you pack a bag and leave. Tomorrow, you can decide which lawyer you want. I've already chosen mine. Sarah didn't fight. That surprised him most. She stood in their kitchen, their former kitchen, really, since nothing about this house felt shared anymore, and nodded once. Then she turned and walked upstairs. Daniel heard drawers opening, the closet door sliding, the soft thud of clothes being tossed into a suitcase. He sat back down, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried him through the confrontation was draining away, leaving behind something raw and painful. This was real. His marriage was ending. In the span of one evening, he'd gone from silent sufferer to active participant in his own divorce. 20 minutes later, Sarah came back down with a rolling suitcase and a duffel bag. She'd changed into jeans and a sweater. Without makeup, she looked younger, more like the woman he'd married. The woman who'd laughed at his jokes and fallen asleep on his shoulder during movie nights. I'll stay at a hotel tonight, she said. Tomorrow I'll figure something out. You could stay with Marcus. The words came out more bitter than he'd intended. Her jaw tightened. This isn't just about Marcus. You know that, right? We've been broken for a long time. Maybe. But you're the one who stepped outside the marriage instead of trying to fix it. And you're the one who knew for 3 months and said nothing. You sat here documenting everything like I was some criminal case study instead of your wife. What does that say about us? She had a point. A small one, but still. His silence had been its own form of betrayal. By gathering evidence instead of confronting her, he'd chosen the marriage's death over its potential resurrection. It says I knew I'd lost you already, he admitted. I just needed to accept it. Something in Sarah's expression softened. For a moment, she looked like she might cry again. Instead, she straightened her shoulders. I'm sorry, Daniel. I really am. You deserved better than this. Yes, he agreed simply. I did. After she left, the house felt cavernous. Daniel walked through rooms that suddenly seemed to belong to strangers. Every object held a memory, and every memory now felt like a lie. Had she been thinking of Marcus when she picked out those curtains? Had she imagined a different future when they'd painted the bedroom last spring? He poured another scotch and stood at the window, watching the street. A dog walker passed by. A teenager skateboarded past. Normal life, continuing obliviously while his imploded. His phone rang. His sister, Rachel. "Hey," he answered. "Hey yourself. Just calling to check in. How's everything?" The question was innocent, but it broke something in him. "Sarah's cheating on me. I confronted her tonight. She just left." Silence. Then, "What? Daniel, what, are you serious?" The words came spilling out. Everything. The location tracking, the documentation, the confrontation. Rachel listened without interrupting, her occasional sharp intakes of breath the only indication of her shock. "I'm coming over," she said when he finished. "You don't have to." "I'm coming over. I'll be there in 30 minutes. Don't argue." She hung up before he could protest. True to her word, Rachel arrived 28 minutes later with a bag of takeout and a bottle of wine. She took one look at his face and pulled him into a fierce hug. "I'm so sorry," she said. "God, Daniel, I'm so sorry." They sat at the kitchen table, the same place he'd confronted Sarah hours earlier. Rachel made him eat even though he insisted he wasn't hungry. She was right, he hadn't eaten since lunch, and the scotch on an empty stomach was making him lightheaded. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "Divorce her. What else is there? I mean besides that. Are you okay?" Stupid question, obviously you're not okay, but, are you going to be okay? Daniel considered this. Was he? He felt like he'd been gutted, his insides scooped out and examined under harsh light. But underneath the pain was something else. That strange relief again. The lifting of a weight he hadn't realized he'd been carrying. "I think so," he said. "Eventually. It's weird, Rach. I thought I'd be devastated. And I am, in a way. But mostly I just feel free." Rachel studied him. "You knew it was over before tonight." "I think I've known for a while. Maybe even before I found out about Marcus. We've been going through the motions for so long. I just didn't want to admit it." "That doesn't make what she did okay." "No," he agreed. "It doesn't. But it makes it make sense, if that makes sense." They talked until 2 in the morning. Rachel helped him clear Sarah's remaining things from the bedroom. He couldn't sleep in there tonight with her perfume still hanging in the air. He set himself up in the guest room instead, fresh sheets and a different view out the window. "I'm proud of you," Rachel said as she was leaving. "For standing up for yourself. For not letting her turn you into the bad guy." "I don't feel like the good guy either." "That's because you're human. Good guys and bad guys are for movies. Real life is messier." She kissed his cheek. "Call me tomorrow, okay? Or tonight if you need to. Anytime." After she left, Daniel lay in the unfamiliar bed, staring at the ceiling. He waited for the tears to come, for the breakdown he'd been holding off all evening. But they didn't. Instead, he felt numb. Hollow. Like a building after a fire, the structure still standing but everything inside burned away. His phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "I'm sorry. For everything. You're a good man, Daniel. Better than I deserved." He didn't respond. What was there to say? Sorry didn't undo 3 months of lies. Sorry didn't rebuild trust or resurrect love. Sorry was just a word people said when they couldn't fix what they'd broken. He turned off his phone and closed his eyes. Tomorrow he'd call lawyers. Tomorrow he'd start the legal process of disentangling 7 years of marriage. Tomorrow he'd figure out how to tell their friends, their families, the world that they'd failed at forever. But tonight, he just needed to sleep. Morning came too soon, sunlight streaming through unfamiliar curtains. For a blissful moment, Daniel forgot. Then reality crashed back in, heavy and suffocating. Sarah was gone. His marriage was over. He lay in bed, listening to the house settle around him. Every creak and groan felt accusatory, like the walls themselves were mourning what had been lost within them. His phone showed a dozen missed texts and calls. Most were from Sarah, lengthy apologies, requests to talk, explanations he didn't want to hear. One was from his mother, somehow already aware of the situation. Rachel, probably. One was from an unknown number. He opened that one first. Mr. Reeves, this is Marcus Webb. I think we should talk. I can meet you today if you're willing. Daniel stared at the message. The audacity of it was almost impressive. The man sleeping with his wife wanted to meet? To say what, exactly? To explain how he'd systematically dismantled another man's marriage? His fingers typed before his brain caught up. Lakeside Park. Noon. The response came immediately. I'll be there. Daniel spent the morning in a fog. He showered, dressed, made coffee he didn't drink. He called the first lawyer on his list, scheduled a consultation for Monday. He ignored Sarah's texts and his mother's calls. He wasn't ready for those conversations yet. At 11:30, he drove to Lakeside Park. The day was unseasonably warm for November, the kind of false spring that fooled crocuses into blooming early. Families dotted the playground. Joggers circled the lake. Everyone going about their normal lives, unaware that his was burning down. Marcus Webb was already there, sitting on a bench overlooking the water. He was dressed casually, jeans, a sweater, expensive-looking sneakers. Up close, he was older than his photo suggested, lines around his eyes speaking to long hours and stress. He stood as Daniel approached. "Thank you for meeting me," Marcus said, extending his hand. Daniel ignored it. "You have 5 minutes. Talk." Marcus withdrew his hand, nodded, and sat back down. Daniel remained standing, arms crossed. "I want to apologize," Marcus began. "I know that's not enough, but I need to say it anyway. What I did, what we did, was wrong. I knew she was married. I pursued her anyway. That makes me culpable. You want absolution? Go to church." "No. I want you to know that Sarah loves you. Whatever she's done, whatever mistake she's made, that's still true." Daniel laughed, sharp and bitter. "You really believe that? That she loves me while she's in your bed?" Marcus flinched. "It's complicated." "It's really not. She chose to cheat. You chose to help her. There's nothing complicated about betrayal." "You're right." Marcus rubbed his face, suddenly looking exhausted. "Look, I'm not here to defend what we did. I'm here because Sarah's wrecked over this. She didn't want to hurt you. Then she shouldn't have slept with you. She felt neglected. Invisible. She said you barely saw her anymore, that work always came first. Don't." Daniel's voice turned hard. "Don't you dare make this about me. I'm not perfect, but I didn't break my vows. I didn't lie for 3 months straight. Whatever problems we had, she should have talked to me, not run to you." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "You're right. I'm sorry." "Stop apologizing. It doesn't mean anything." Daniel started to walk away, then turned back. "One question. Do you love her?" The question seemed to catch Marcus off guard. Yes. I think I do." "Then why did you destroy any chance she might have taken you seriously? She'll never trust you now. She knows what you're capable of. If you'll help her cheat on me, you'll help someone else cheat on her." Daniel watched the truth of that sink in. Marcus's face went pale. "I didn't think about it that way." "No, you didn't think at all. You just wanted what you wanted and didn't care about the consequences." Daniel shook his head. "Here's the thing, Marcus. You didn't win anything. You got a woman who's now divorced, guilty, and knows exactly what kind of man you are. Congratulations." He left Marcus sitting there and walked back to his car. The conversation hadn't brought closure or satisfaction. If anything, he felt worse. Marcus seemed human, flawed, regretful. It would have been easier if he'd been a villain. His phone rang. "Sarah." Against his better judgment, he answered. "Daniel. Why did you give Marcus my number?" I didn't. He must have gotten it from my phone. I'm sorry. Did he call you? We just met. Silence. Then, what did he say? That you love me. That I neglected you. That he's sorry. Daniel unlocked his car but didn't get in. Sarah, I need you to understand something. I'm not interested in blame or excuses anymore. This happened. We can't undo it. We need to figure out how to move forward. Move forward. Her voice was small. You mean the divorce? What else would I mean? I thought, maybe if we talked, if we tried counseling. No. The word came out harder than he intended. He softened his voice. Sarah, it's over. It was over the moment you walked into that apartment in Lincoln Park. Maybe it was over even before that. We've been pretending for so long that I don't know when we stopped being real. He heard her crying. Once, that sound would have broken him. Now it just made him sad. I loved you, she said. I still do. Maybe. But love isn't enough. It never was. He got in the car. We'll figure out the logistics. Lawyers, the house, all of it. But I can't do this anymore. I can't be the person you come home to when your real life doesn't work out. That's not. It is. And you know it is. Goodbye, Sarah. He hung up before she could respond. The drive home was a blur. When he pulled into the driveway, he sat for a long moment, engine off, just staring at the house. This building that had represented their future now felt like a mausoleum for their past. His phone buzzed. Rachel, how are you holding up? He texted back, I met with him. Her boyfriend. The phone rang immediately. You did what? Rachel's voice was sharp with disbelief. He texted me. Wanted to meet. I figured, why not? Might as well put a face to the man who helped blow up my marriage. And? What was he like? Daniel thought about Marcus Webb sitting on that park bench, looking guilty and lost. Human. Flawed. Not the monster I wanted him to be. That's almost worse, isn't it? Yeah. He got out of the car and went inside. The house still smelled like Sarah's perfume. He said she loves me. As if that makes it better. Maybe she does. People are messy, Daniel. We can love someone and still hurt them. Doesn't matter. I can't go back to what we were. I won't. Good. You deserve better. A pause. What are you doing right now? Sitting in my house, trying to figure out what comes next. Wrong answer. Get dressed. Something nice. I'm taking you to dinner. Ratch, I'm not really up for. Too bad. You need to get out of that house. Besides, I'm already in my car. You have 30 minutes. She hung up before he could argue. Daniel looked around the living room. Wedding photos still lined the shelves. Sarah's book was still on the coffee table, bookmark halfway through. Evidence of a life that no longer existed. He could sit here drowning in what he'd lost, or he could take Rachel's lifeline. He chose the latter. 40 minutes later, he'd needed more time than Rachel allotted. He met his sister at Giordano's. She'd already secured a booth and ordered them appetizers. You look like hell, she said cheerfully. Thanks. You look lovely too. She grinned. But seriously, how are you? Real answer. Daniel considered the question. How was he? His marriage was ending. His wife had been unfaithful. His home felt like a stranger's. By all rights, he should be devastated. I'm okay, he said, surprised to find it mostly true. Better than I expected. Talk to me. I keep waiting for it to hurt more. Like there should be this crushing pain, you know? But instead, it's more like relief. Like I've been holding my breath for months and can finally exhale. Rachel reached across the table and squeezed his hand. That's because you've been grieving this marriage for a while. You just didn't realize it. Maybe. He took a sip of the water the waiter had brought. I saw our whole future, Rach. Kids, growing old together, all of it. And now it's just gone. No, it's not gone. It's different. You'll still have a future. It just won't look like you planned. How do you get over something like this? How do you trust anyone again? One day at a time. One choice at a time. She leaned back as the waiter brought their pizza. And you remember that Sarah's choices say everything about her and nothing about you. You weren't unlovable. She just wasn't capable of loving you the way you deserved. They ate and talked, and for stretches of minutes at a time, Daniel forgot about the divorce, the betrayal, the implosion of his life. Rachel had always been good at that, creating pockets of normalcy in chaos. His phone buzzed. Another text from Sarah. I moved my things out today while you were gone. I didn't want it to be awkward. I'm staying with my sister. The lawyer I chose is Linda Martinez. Have yours contact her. Daniel showed Rachel the text. Quick work, she said. She always was efficient. How do you feel about that? Grateful, honestly. I couldn't face watching her pack. Seeing what she took, what she left behind. This is cleaner. After dinner, Rachel drove him home. The house was noticeably emptier. Sarah had taken her clothes, her books, half the kitchen stuff. The bare spaces were stark reminders of what was gone, but also, Daniel realized with a start, they were also blank canvases. He could repaint, rearrange, make this space his own instead of theirs. You going to be okay tonight? Rachel asked from the doorway. Yeah, I think so. Call me if you need anything. I mean it. 3 a.m., doesn't matter. After she left, Daniel walked through the house slowly, taking inventory. Every empty space was a wound, but also a possibility. The bedroom where Sarah's dresser had been could fit a reading chair. The bathroom counter was no longer crowded with her products. The closet had room for things he'd never had space for before. He pulled out his laptop and opened a new document. Life After Sarah, he titled it. Then he started writing. Not about the affair or the betrayal. Not about Marcus Webb or the divorce proceedings. Instead, he wrote about the Daniel he wanted to become. The one who prioritized himself sometimes. Who maintained friendships beyond his marriage. Who traveled and took risks and didn't play it so safe all the time. He'd spent 7 years being Sarah's husband. Maybe it was time to remember how to be just Daniel. The next morning, he woke early and went for a run. Something he hadn't done in years, not since the early days of their marriage when he'd still had hobbies and interests beyond work and home. His legs protested, his lungs burned, but it felt good. Cleansing. He showered, made actual breakfast instead of just coffee, and sat down to face the day. His phone showed a text from his lawyer confirming their Monday meeting. Another from his mother, finally responding to Rachel's update with an excess of heart emojis and offers to help however she could. One from Sarah, I hope you're doing okay. He replied simply, I will be. And he believed it. Over the next few days, Daniel fell into a new rhythm. He went to work, came home, and spent evenings reclaiming his space. He moved furniture, ordered new sheets, took down the wedding photos. Not in anger. There was no ceremony of burning pictures or destroying memories. He simply boxed them up and stored them in the basement. They were part of his history, but they didn't need to be his present. Friends started calling as word spread. Some offered sympathy. Others, especially the divorced ones, offered practical advice. Get a good lawyer. Don't make decisions when you're emotional. It gets better, I promise. The one that stuck with him came from his old college roommate. Mike, this is your chance to figure out who you are without her. Don't waste it trying to become who you were before her. Move forward, not backward. Monday came. Daniel met with his lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Chen who'd been recommended by a colleague. She reviewed his documentation, asked pointed questions, and laid out the likely timeline. Illinois recognizes irreconcilable differences, she explained. With her admission of infidelity and your documentation, the proceedings should be straightforward. 6 months to a year, depending on how cooperative everyone is. She seems willing to make it easy. Patricia gave him a knowing look. Guilt is a powerful motivator. But people change their minds. Be prepared for that. Sarah didn't change her mind. Over the following weeks, she proved surprisingly amenable to every term. She didn't fight for the house or their savings. She asked for little and conceded much. In their few necessary phone calls, she sounded small and sad, but never combative. "I just want this to be over," she told him during one conversation about dividing their shared possessions. "I want you to be able to move on." "What about you?" he asked, not sure why he cared. "I'm figuring it out. Marcus and we're not together." It turned out that starting a relationship with betrayal isn't a great foundation. Who knew? The bitter irony wasn't lost on either of them. "I'm sorry it ended like this," she said softly. "For what it's worth, I really did love you. I just lost my way." "I know. I'm sorry too. For my part in it. For letting us drift." It wasn't forgiveness, not quite. But it was acknowledgement. They'd both failed their marriage in different ways. The difference was she'd failed spectacularly while he'd failed quietly. Neither was noble. 3 months after that fateful night, Daniel signed the divorce papers in Patricia's office. His hand shook slightly as he wrote his name. 7 years of marriage, reduced to signatures and legal jargon. "How do you feel?" Patricia asked. "Like closing a book," he said. "Sad to reach the end, but glad to have read it." He drove home, his home now, legally and emotionally, and sat in the driveway for a moment. The house no longer felt haunted by Sarah's absence. It felt like his. A space for him to grow into whoever he was becoming. His phone buzzed. "Rachel, want to grab dinner? Celebrate your freedom." He smiled. "Absolutely." That evening, sitting across from his sister in a restaurant that had nothing to do with his former life, Daniel felt it fully for the first time. Possibility. The future was unwritten. Terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. "To new beginnings," Rachel toasted, raising her glass. "To new beginnings," Daniel echoed. And he meant it. The man who'd read that text 3 months ago, "I'm busy," and responded stay with him had been at the end of something. This Daniel, sitting in a restaurant with his whole life ahead of him, was at the beginning. He didn't know what came next. Maybe he'd travel. Maybe he'd change careers. Maybe he'd fall in love again, though that felt distant and unlikely now. But whatever came, it would be his choice. His life. His story. The text that night had been the end of his marriage. But it had also been the beginning of himself. And as painful as the journey had been, he couldn't regret where it had brought him. He was free. And for the first time in years, Daniel Reeves was excited to see what he'd do with that freedom.